Hi, I'm Brian Dunn, and welcome to the most important podcast ever. What makes it so important? It's not about me, it's about you. Although today is a Q&A session where I've been gathering your questions after the first 5 episodes, and so it's a little bit about me, but it's primarily always about you. And as you know, this podcast is about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, the moments of resilience, the lessons learned, and the small acts that make a big difference. From retail floors to boardrooms, we'll share the untold stories that shape lives and careers. And to help us today, we have my friend Sean Dusing from Streetside Studio 7, who is also the master roaster for Deja Blue House of Coffee. How you doing today, Sean?
Great. Thanks. Nice to be with you today, Brian.
Great to have you. Thanks for helping out. So we've been saving up the questions that you have sent in after the podcast and some of our social media pleas for your questions. And Sean's got a list of some of those right now.
All right, start it off. Brian, you always say it's not about me, it's about you. But what inspired you to make this podcast in the first place?
I have been trying to write a book for about 10 years about all the amazing people I've met along the way, and not the famous people, not the sports figures, but the real people out there making a difference every day, the ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And I found this opportunity with Streetside Studio 7, and it just felt like a better fit for me because writing, every time I would write something, I would absolutely get stuck because I hated it. It's just a fact.
All right. After 5 episodes now, what's something surprising you learned from your guests or from the process of listening deeply?
I'll tell you what, the biggest surprise for me, I know the highlights of all these stories from having met these people along the way. What has surprised me the most is the depth of emotion I have felt as we've sat here through the screen talking that I have felt, and they've moved me deeply, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah, I've caught a lot of that too in the episodes. So your guests talk a lot about navigating loss, change, and finding purpose again. How have those themes showed up in your own life?
Those themes have resonated very deeply in my own life. My wife we went through a long battle with cancer, 15 years, and it's really all about resilience. It's about learning to move forward, not moving on, but moving forward. And it's part of why I love these stories so well, because I find them not only inspiring, I find them instructional.
Yeah, so you've called these ordinary people doing extraordinary things. What's a moment in your own story where you felt that description might apply to you?
Boy, that's really tough. And I got to tell you, when I went to name this Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things, it wasn't to put pressure on our guests. It's about the brilliance of the every man and every woman and how they navigate the inevitable challenges that life presents and how they move forward, carrying what they've learned, what they felt, and made their tomorrows enriched by these difficult experiences. So I will tell you, caring for my wife towards the end of her journey made me a better human being in every way.
So what story from a guest hit you the hardest or stayed with you long after the mic was off?
Oh boy, there's pieces from each of the guests that have stayed with me. Susan Williams' story, and I've known Susan for a long time, but Susan's story and the resilience and the power of her spirit refreshing itself and finding great purpose after huge trauma stayed with me. as did Troy taking the leap at 27 or 28 and chasing a passion so that he wouldn't have to look back and say, boy, what if I had done this? I think about Mish and what she went through, a sort of storybook romance, a husband working together, and then the resilience she showed in overcoming that terrible loss. And Eric and his common sense approach to leadership stayed with me. And finally, Jimmy's story last week brought all of that with Kyle back in a way that was powerful and not morose, but inspiring. And Sean, it's really like asking me which one's my favorite child. I mean, each story has meant a lot to me. And that's one of the things I try to do is I curate these stories. I want these to be stories that I sincerely believe are meaningful, so they're meaningful for our audience.
Yeah, I've felt the power of those, even just sitting, behind the camera during each one of those and feeling the emotion that's coming out of that. So very touching. So the second group of questions now is specific to connecting with the episodes 1 through 5. So the first question was Susan Berard. She talked about honoring her late mother and finding new purpose. How do you continue to honor Susie's legacy in your day-to-day life?
First, by being a good dad. It's the most important job I have. And my boys have grown into fine men now and are well on their way in their careers, beyond on their way. They're doing very well, but still being the responsibility of being that single parent, that's very important. And really, it's the way I try to live my life each and every day, that I thank God for my day every day. I start my day that way. I end my day that way. And I frequently think, what would Susie think about this? And she still acts as a bit of a North Star for me out there on the horizon.
Yeah, that's a great way to honor your wife.
Thank you.
Second question. Troy Amaris had left corporate life to coach basketball before returning to a business with a fresh lens. Have you ever taken a leap like that? What did you learn?
I've taken a number of leaps in my life, but nothing that sort of dramatic like Troy did. For me, it was as much about jobs I said no to as jobs I said yes to, and navigating my way through that. But I'm under no illusion that I wasn't very fortunate in having many great opportunities.
All right, the third question. Michelle Carey shared the importance of choosing positivity in the face of personal loss. How do you choose positivity when life punches hard?
And life does punch hard for everyone. And I think that choice every day, one of the things I like to do in all my social media is #GratefulHeart. And I think grateful heart is a choice every day. I also think, like your biceps or triceps, you've got to exercise that grateful heart every day, because if you don't, it'll atrophy. I mean, Michelle talked about taking a short stop at Pity City. Everybody has a crummy morning here and there, but you got to choose gratitude all the time.
Eric Harkins talked about building cultures people want to be part of. If you were starting a new team tomorrow, what would your culture non-negotiables be?
When I first started working at Best Buy, there was a store manager, Larry Kerr, who was very meaningful in my life. And Larry brought a basketball out, and he gave a talk to the team, and he said, we've got some new members of the team today, and this basketball is a symbol of our team. And I saw the ball, and everybody's signature was on it. He said, we're going to have these guys sign this today. And he said, we use the basketball because there's no top, there's no bottom. There's spaces all around the ball. everyone's important. Everyone matters, whether you're ringing a register, selling a television, or carrying it out to a car. And that really stayed with me. So if I was starting over today, the first thing I'd want to land in the culture is that everyone matters, regardless of what their role is. 2, you never know where the answers are going to come from. So you want to create an environment where people feel free, in fact, are driven to come forward and say, I think this about that. And I think thirdly, you have to meet people where they are and understand that their job shouldn't be their most important thing. I used to always say, I hope that we're not your most important thing. I hope we're third or fourth. I hope your family, I hope your faith, I hope your friends, and then your profession. So it's sort of those principles. And I know it sounds lofty and it's real easy. Like Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth, but I think you have to have those bedrock principles in those invariable moments when things get difficult. You need to have something to go back and be true to.
Yeah, I think that was a great analogy. And I think really puts it into a perspective of what it's really like in the trenches.
Yeah.
That you're all working together. Jimmy Williams wrote about getting through the worst possible thing. What helped you get through your worst moment, and what did you carry forward from it?
First of all, let me say, been through some tough moments. Nothing like what Jimmy and Leslie and Kyle went through. I just want to put that out there. And for me, my worst possible thing, what it really reignited in me is a closer connection to my faith, to my friends, and it made me a better person. It made me more empathetic. It made me more committed to making a difference in my little corner of the world.
Yeah. So the third group of questions, more personal, behind the scenes questions.
Uh-oh.
What's something you've learned about yourself by stepping into the role of host and curator of other people's stories?
Boy, that's a really good question. And I think there's a number of things, but the things I'll highlight are every single person that we walk by on the street or meet in a store or interact with in any way, they have their story and they have their worst possible thing and they have their ambitions. And what it reminds me of being a host of this show is the importance and the majesty of those stories in seemingly ordinary people.
That's sort of the impetus of the magic behind all of it.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
So what's one moment on or off mic when you felt like, yes, this is why I'm doing this?
It's happened in each episode. And let me be clear. It's been a long time since I've done any public speaking or any work on camera. So I've been a little nervous getting used to all this, but I have loved doing it. And I will tell you, the moment that's been most powerful for me, and it's happened in every episode, is when our guest, whoever story we're featuring, and their eyes light up and they get into a role and they're talking to us straight from their heart about what it is they've been through. And I'm overwhelmed by the strength of all of our guests in talking about very personal, challenging, life-changing events and how articulate they are about what they've taken from it and how it's been instructive for their lives as they roll forward.
Always full of emotion, and that's what I've gotten out of every one of the episodes too. Just it's not just a conversation.
No.
It's emotion coming out.
And it's raw.
Yeah.
And it's real. And it's, I feel very blessed that these people have been willing to share their stories. And I think they all do it for the same reason. They want to make a difference for the people that come behind them. And I think it's awesome.
So you've talked about small acts making a big difference. Can you share one from your life that meant more than people probably realized?
Oh boy, there's so many. I receive a lot of correspondence from people I've worked with or met along the way, and somebody will remember an interaction we had, or somebody will share a piece of advice or a conversation we had. And those little things, the people that send me those letters, you have no idea. And I always respond, and I always tell them, your letter found me at exactly the right moment. And it never fails. And I don't think I can adequately express my gratitude for those moving notes and updates about what people are doing now. I love that. I love that.
That's great. So, what's one story you want to tell in a future episode, your own or someone else's, that listeners should stay tuned for?
Uh, I'll tell you what. I have us scheduled out through May and into June now. And we've got some amazing stories coming up. I'm not going to tip or put any pressure on those folks, but there's some great stories coming up. And I also am going to turn the camera on myself, and I'm going to have somebody interview me, because I'd like to, everybody's been vulnerable sharing their story. I want to do mine.
So, this last question, it's one that I've described to people many, many times over, unbeknownst to you, because I think there's so much power behind it. And the question is, what's the story behind Streetside Studio 7, and why did you choose to record the podcast there?
This is so serendipitous. I love it. I'm sitting here overlooking Main Street, Alexandria, Minnesota, in Deja Blue House of Coffee, enjoying what I think is the best cup of coffee in Alexandria. I've been trying to write a book for 10 years. And I have a lot of things I want to talk about. And as I mentioned earlier in this discussion, I've had real difficulty, because anytime I write anything about myself, I just get blocked up. And I walked in here, and I'm a huge podcast junkie. I listen to a lot of podcasts. And I walked in here one day and met Patty. And Patty was in the middle of working on something at my favorite table at the front end of the restaurant. And it became Streetside Studio 7. So you and I and Patty and Thomas and Angelica have talked about this with some regularity. This was all meant to be. I really believe it. It feels just right. And I love being involved with a grassroots effort again. And I'm so excited to be part of the team. I really am. And I love working with Thomas, our chief technician. I love working with you, Sean. And I absolutely love working with Patty and Angelica. And there are so many things, but what I'd love to do is I'd love to bring Patty in, and maybe let's hear what she says about that. So I started to tell the story about Streetside Studio 7, and the story really should be told by Patty Dusing, who's here right now, who is the driving impetus behind Studio 7. How did this come to be, Patty?
I tell you what, I, much like you, have been wanting to start a podcast for about 8 years. I started the process not really committed, because once I commit to something, Sean and I go all in. But being downtown for 9 years and getting to know the business owners, getting to know downtown Alexandria, there's quite a little ecosystem that happens down here. And it ebbs and flows. Business is good, business is not so good. And that goes for all of us down here. And I started thinking, what can I do? What can we do to help raise awareness for downtown? We know so many people, so many of our great customers share stories. And I thought, this is it. It's now or never. We're going to get this podcast going. And almost in an instant, I had a vision, if you will, of a little studio with French doors like we have here in the storefront to be able to, as we're recording and interviewing people, we can watch life go by in this little bubble of downtown Alexandria. So it came all at once. I knew what I wanted, and then we got to work. So it really is about helping others, doing what we can to help ourselves grow, Thomas grow, Angelica grow. It's all about growth, really.
And that commitment shows. I do have a suggestion for downtown. Once a month, we need to close the street off.
Oh.
And we need to have a little street dance and have some fun and celebrate Main Street America. What you're really talking about is you and Sean are living the entrepreneur's sweat of building a business and nurturing it. And I'm just so impressed by what you've built here, not only in your store, but this vision for this studio. And I'm very grateful and thrilled. Can you mention the shows that are recorded here?
Yeah, definitely. So never expected to have 5 podcasts out of here. And I'm so happy that we do have that many filming out of the space. We've got your podcast, the most important podcast ever.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We've got our podcast, Sean and I, Grounds for Discussion. We have Zany Talks. Is that correct, Thomas?
Yep, Zany Talks.
Zany Talks podcast. And we have Pages of Ink podcast. And that podcast is my niece Angelica. Her focus is books, etc.
And then don't we have the unspecified show?
Oh, yes. And little Miles. How could I forget Miles? Sorry, Miles. The Unspecified Show is one of our employees. He has his own podcast as well.
Miles is a trip, too.
Yes.
So
one of a kind.
I just want to say thank you. I've been very public about this. I love working with the Street Side Studio 7 team. And this experience so far has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Patty.
You are so welcome.
So that's it for this episode of the most important podcast ever. Big thanks to Patty and Sean and Thomas and everybody in the Studio 7, Streetside Studio 7 team. If you've enjoyed this conversation, share it with someone who might find it meaningful. And you can watch and listen on YouTube and follow us on our social media, which I will link as I publish this episode. I thank you all so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.